Hi, and welcome to another video tutorial in which I'm going to be talking about the difference between a static and a dynamic data structure. So let's first of all go through what a dynamic data structure is, and then we'll look at static data structures. So what we've got with a dynamic data structure is a data structure that doesn't have a fixed size. So you can continually add data to that structure, and how this is achieved is using something called a heap. And a heap is a portion of memory for which space can be automatically allocated or deallocated as required. So if the data structure is using a lot of memory, then the size of the heap will increase. Whereas if the data structure is not using a lot of memory, the size of the heap will decrease. So it will decrease and increase depending on how much memory the data structure is using. And dynamic data structures are useful when implementing a data structure where the size of the data that's going to be stored is not known by the programmer. So an example of a dynamic data structure in a programming language would be the list data structure in Python. And the list data structure in Python is dynamic because you can continue to add items to a list in Python with the only limit being the amount of memory that your computer has. And so yes, that's why Python lists can be considered to be dynamic data structures. Okay, so let's move on to look at static data structures. So static data structures are sort of the opposite of dynamic in that they do have a fixed size. And static data structures are used when the size of the data being stored is known by the programmer beforehand when they're writing the program. And an example of this might be storing an address where you have it stored in a static array, and you know that the address has got 4 lines, so you just have an array with 4 items in it, and each item is the string of that line of the address. So what are the advantages? Why might you use a static data structure? Well, the advantage of a static data structure is that you don't have to have any control over how much memory. You don't have to keep any control over how much memory is being used by the structure, because you already know in advance how much memory is going to be used. But what are the disadvantages of a static data structure? Well, the disadvantages are that if the structure fills up, you can't store any more data in that data structure. So if you've got an application where you need to store more data in that data structure, you're going to have to use a dynamic data structure. And also that memory allocated to the data structure can't be reallocated even if not all the memory allocated to that data structure is being used. Whereas with a dynamic data structure, we've got our heap, which the size of which can be increased or decreased depending on how much memory the data structure is using. Okay, so that's just a brief overview of what a dynamic data structure is and what a static data structure is, and the differences between them. And this will be useful to refer back to if you're watching some of my tutorials on the specifics of different data structures such as queues, stacks and things like that, about what the advantages are of dynamic and static. Okay, so that's it. That brings us to the end of this tutorial video. Thanks for watching.